guys, and welcome back to another episode of Questions with Connie. And today I want to do a movie review Friday because this movie came out today and I wanted to make sure that you guys have the info on it and what I thought about it before you get to theaters this weekend. So let's get into it. So first and foremost, I do a couple of different criteria when it comes to movie ratings, so I'm going to get into those for you guys. But first and foremost, I want to give you my off-the-top rating for this movie. So I gave it a 4 out of 10, and I am sorry that that's disappointing. I know I felt disappointed watching the movie for a number of different reasons, so I'm going to get into all of those so that way you have the 411 on exactly what I thought and where I think they could have done a lot of improvements. Let's get into that. So one of the things I do is something I call the husband sleep test, and the reason I do that is because my husband is one of those that anything is distracting or too slow or whatever it is, he won't stay awake. And so I find that that is a very great little tidbit of information for people that are going into the theaters. If you have a friend who is a movie watcher like my husband is with me, then you kind of have a gauge on whether or not this is going to hold their attention. So for my husband, for this one, it did pass the husband sleep test. However, I will say that there are some caveats to that. So first and foremost, we did have some Dunkin' Donuts coffee right before this. So we wanted to make sure that we, were alert just so that way we could catch every little thing in the movie. So we normally don't do that. So that's kind of a little bit of a factor there. My husband did have a little bit of coffee, so that probably swayed it just a little bit. However, we still feel like it kept his attention in the sense that we kept wanting to see exactly where the storyline was going to go, because we were so looking forward to this movie. When we saw the sneak previews and when we saw the official trailer, we were so excited to see what they were going to do with the storyline, where they were going to go with it, and how much information and backstory you were going to get on the strangers themselves. So that is part of why I just wanted to kind of drop that in there. So he did stay awake for this movie. However, it was because we wanted to see exactly where they took the storyline. And to be honest with you, he admitted he was very disappointed and almost thought he should have gone to sleep instead. So I will leave that with you. One of the other things that I judge a movie on is something I call the trailer test. So for this, I want to basically measure the movie to the trailer and whether I feel like I was, in essence, kind of sold the lemon in that situation. Like, did they really polish it up? Did they really splice it to make it look like a masterpiece when really it wasn't? And use all the best parts of the movie in the trailer. So for me, I really feel like this one failed the trailer test because I think that the trailer really built it up to be more than what I felt it delivered. So for me, in that sense, it definitely failed it, and it fell short to me on exactly what my expectations were of this movie going in. I will say that they really already had the bar set pretty high when it comes to the other two movies. So The Strangers, the first one, starring, Liv Tyler, that one is just such a strong movie because the acting is so great in it. I just think that you connect very well with these two main characters and what's going on in their story, and they really sell their storyline. The second movie, which is The Strangers Pray at Night, love that one as well, mainly because it does such a great job of really wrapping things up in the end to where you get closure on the situation. And you really feel like all your angst and frustration that built up throughout the movie does get relinquished in the end. So I really like that one for that reason as well. Not to mention that the acting is really great in it. I will say that this one, part of the reason that I feel like they were kind of set up for failure a little bit is that a lot of it is the same storyline as the first one. So if you've seen the first one, you're going to see a lot of dead ringer moments from that one basically rehashed in this one. I felt some type of way about that because coming into this movie, I'm expecting to either, for one, see some kind of backstory, some actual behind the curtain of what the strangers are about, what they kind of hypothesize their story to be, their origin story to have been, something that really tells more of the how did this occur, like what happened to build up to this situation. So that being said, with them having so many parallels, it's really hard for you not to judge a lot of things from this particular movie based on the other movie because they are so incredibly similar. And when they do that, it's just setting you up to constantly be thinking back to that other movie. And honestly, if you're going to do that, you really need to do some major different things in order to really set this one apart. And in my opinion, they really did not do that. It felt to me like the first one rehashed and with weaker acting. And I'm so sorry because I know that these actors probably worked their tails off doing this movie. And I know that some of them, may not be as experienced as the actors in the original movie. But I just think that it fell short for me in that way, that I just constantly kept thinking of the other one. And honestly, when you're watching a movie and it makes you want to rewatch a different movie because you want to kind of get it out of your head, that's not a good situation. It just doesn't bode well for the movie itself. So take that as you will. So if you are okay with that aspect of it mirroring the other one and just not being as strong acting wise, then maybe you'll want to watch it. And again, I don't deter anyone from watching a movie. If you want to watch the movie, by all means, you definitely should. But I'm just giving you my opinion so that way you kind of have an idea going in exactly what to expect, because I didn't. I just kind of went in blind and definitely felt some type of way about it. So another aspect that I judge a movie on is the scary versus story ratio. So when I talk about this, what I mean is whether or not I feel like the story dragged and there wasn't enough scary in it to really justify it, or opposite, where it was just all gore, no substance, just, straight slasher, nothing else going on. So in this particular one, I feel like there was way too much story and not enough scary. So don't get me wrong, there are definitely a lot of really great jump scares in this movie. That is probably the only saving grace from this movie, is that there were a great amount of jump scares, which is to be expected from the most part for this franchise. However, there is also so incredibly much that the characters do wrong that you feel beaten over the head with it, to the point that it makes it hard to enjoy the movie. So I do understand fully that in all scary movies, you're going to have these moments where the characters do things completely ridiculous, or that I feel are completely ridiculous. And I'm sure if you're a fellow horror watcher, you definitely find some of these moments almost laughable. And we have seen that, unfortunately, in real life, some of these things do happen. However, with this one in particular, there's just so many times that they do things that make you want to bash your head into a wall, that it makes it to where you completely are taken out of the story, and you just are so frustrated that you honestly start to side with the bad guys and are just like, get it over with already, because I'm so over this situation and seeing these people do everything absolutely wrong that it's almost like they want to die. And so when that happens, to an extent, like I said, in certain situations, I understand panic, and you can think in hindsight what you would do in a situation. However, when adrenaline's pumping and you're scared and all kinds of things happen, you don't necessarily know what you would do in that moment. But sometimes the situations are so flagrant and out there and over the top that it just makes you go, what is happening? Why are they doing this? Are they in on it? Do they want to die? I don't understand. So with saying that, there's a movie that actually is the hilarious opposite of that, which is Dale and Tucker. Picture of the movie in here, or link to it somewhere. But that movie is hilarious because it's basically making fun of that whole scenario and those parts in scary movies. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It is a great dark comedy that you will enjoy, I'm sure, start to finish, because it makes fun of all of those aspects. And if you're like me and you kind of poke fun at those things too, then this will definitely get your humor for sure. When a movie is supposed to be serious and I see people doing things that just don't make sense at all, I find it incredibly frustrating, and it just leads me to feeling a helpless anxiety, and I don't like that. So if that's okay with you, you may be okay with this. You may think differently, and you may watch these movies and think, they're perfectly normal for behaving the way they do. I personally want to scream at the screen and say, what are you doing? And the other thing about it, and I could go off honestly on a tangent about this whole aspect of horror movies, is because, for example, my husband and I have been together for nearly a decade. And something that we discuss about these situations in particular is if you have built a lasting relationship with someone to the point that you trust them enough to live with them, lay next to them every night, all of the above, right? Then in what world does it make sense if you were to come home and your significant other is like level 10 scared, telling you that something is wrong, and your reaction is not to meet their panic with your own level of panic and think, okay, let's go into crisis mode. The fact that in these movies they make it to where the partner who has known the other person for X amount of years is just like, no, nothing's wrong. You're insane. Surely you're imagining things. I don't get it. And to me, that is completely unrealistic, at least in my world, because if my husband were to tell me that something is wrong and I walk in the door and he is level 10 panicked, I'm not even asking questions. I've got the keys in my hand. Let's go. No question about it. So if at least in some of these movies they would make it to where the people at least make an attempt, which, if you've seen the first movie, there is somewhat of a situation like that where they do kind of start to do that, and then something stops them, then fine, then I get it. Then they tried, but it didn't work, and they immediately met something bad happening that kept them from leaving. Then that makes sense. Then I can understand why the characters didn't leave or had no way out. But if you don't do that and the people basically just choose to stay in the situation, at that point my empathy kind of leaves and goes out the window. And now I'm just thinking like, you're so stupid. Why did you do that? So I don't know if you feel that way. That's just how I feel. And I mean, I feel the same way sometimes, and and I try to have as much empathy and kindness in my heart as I can. But there are situations, like even on the first 48 and other stories that I will hear, and I don't know about you, but I will hear them and I'm just like, why did you still go in there? Or why did you still do this? Or why didn't you turn around right then? But I guess I've, because I'm a horror fan, I have just, become one of those people that I feel like I see scary scenarios coming at 100 paces. So I am not going to be that person that's like, la 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 la, it's okay. Sure, I heard a creepy noise in the house. Let me go and take a shower. It's not happening, bruh. If I feel scared, or if I have even the slightest inclination that something creepy is going on in my home or in the place that I am staying, or supposed to feel safe, first thing I'm doing, making sure I have running shoes on. Second thing I'm doing, if my hair isn't already up in a ponytail, it's going up. Third thing I'm doing is I'm making sure that I have a weapon of some kind. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be a shoe. It can be, a hairspray bottle and a lighter. Whatever I can possibly turn into a weapon is going to be in my hands. Because if you're going to take me down, I'm going to take something. I'm going to make sure that you earn that kill, because it is just, and it's astronomical to me that they don't do this a lot in movies, where people just kind of sit there like a sitting duck waiting for the person to come and clobber them to death. I'm sorry, but realistically speaking, myself personally, I just can't see that as realistic. I'm going to want to do something. I'm going to want to prepare myself in some way, shape, or form. And if at least in these movies they would do a better job of at least giving the character somewhat of a thread of common sense, and at least that we can, as the audience, can relate to them at least trying, then that to me would help balance things out. But if I honestly can't even root for you because you're doing such a poor job at avoiding danger that you're basically walking into the bad people's hands, that's a problem. So that's just how I feel about it. You guys might feel differently. I don't know. I definitely want to hear from you in the comments. Let me know how you feel. It's just, I got a lot of feelings about these things. But anyway, with the story versus scary. So like I said, too much story is because they slow burn you into it at first. And like I said, that wouldn't be a problem if the storyline, had gone somewhere good. For me, I was expecting that they were going to do a lot more behind the curtain and a lot more information on exactly what led to the strangers, or hell, even to tell you how they came up with the, is Tamara home line. Something to give me some insight into these people and what possessed them to do what they're doing. Because that was kind of what I felt a chapter 1 would be, right? Would be what started it all. Not just dropping me into the same exact storyline that you've already told me, but with different people. So that's how I feel about that. I'm not going to go too far into it because, again, I don't want to spoil it. But at the same time, I want to prepare you for exactly what you're getting into if you go and see this movie in theaters. Out the gate, honestly, though, without me saying anything about it, this movie is spoiled anyway because it is a prequel and there are 2 other movies that are supposed to be in the timeline after it. So if you're doing the math, that tells you automatically some things that you're going to know ahead of time going in to watch the movie. If you don't know that it's a prequel and you aren't watching the other movies or you don't know anything about them, then this movie might be entirely a different experience for you. So if you are definitely someone who has not seen the other movies, maybe go ahead and hold off on watching those and just watch this one and then watch the other ones. That may be a completely different experience. I can't unsee the other movies, so I can't tell you from any other perspective besides someone who's already seen the franchise, knows exactly what the other storylines are and how well those were told. So it's really hard, and I guess I'm a little bit harsher a critic on the movie because of the fact that the other 2, in my opinion, were so strong. But that being said, again, if you want to see the movie, by all means, you should do that. Don't let me keep you from that. So something else I like to mention in these reviews is, what would I change? What would I do different? Why? Because, oftentimes we see people criticize a lot of things, but then there's no answer as far as to, well, what would you do different and how would you change it? How would you make it better? So my answer to that would, for one, like I mentioned earlier, make the victims more relatable by making them a little bit smarter, or at least do some things that make more sense. So I recognize that in this movie, because it's a prequel, there are certain things that cannot happen in the storyline in order for it to make sense for the other 2 movies to happen after it. However, there are ways that you can still meet the same scenario, but have the characters have tried different things to get there. For example, there is a particular situation in the movie where, like I said, someone comes home and finds the person is freaking out and chooses not to leave. So in my opinion, what you could do in that situation to make it more believable and relatable but still end with the same conclusion is, rather than having the person just not believe the person that they've been with and trusted this whole time, but instead have them say, yes, oh my God, let's get out of here. But then as soon as they try to leave, have something keeping them from leaving. And that really right there in and of itself makes you relate to the characters because you think, smart, they're doing what I would do. And then seeing them react to a situation that, would make you panic. And then so you're putting yourself into the same shoes. So that's one thing that I would change. Another thing I would change is the main actress, although she was great, there were certain aspects where I felt like the theatrics were a bit much. And kind of made things a little more cringe than believable. And once you see this movie, you will understand exactly what I mean. And this is especially toward the end of the movie, where there are scenarios where you're just like, okay guys, come on, you're going overboard into the corny, into the magoo, and that just did not read well for me. I was kind of laughing by the end of it, like, oh my god. So I would tone down the theatrics and trying to oversell this relationship. It just seemed too much like they were trying to compete with that first movie. And again, this is mostly because it is almost the exact same storyline, and it just doesn't sell. Let's just put it that way. It just does not land. So I would have toned that way down. They could have even made these characters honestly brother and sister, and it wouldn't have taken away from it, and it would have given us a different dynamic instead of having it be the almost exact same thing. The other thing I would change is, like I mentioned, give an actual backstory, give some sort of Easter egg, some sort of insight into exactly what made the strangers, because that's what I thought I was going to get in this movie, was some sort of behind the curtain, behind the scenes, something different from the other two movies that was going to make it the chapter 1. That didn't happen, and I'm really, really, really disappointed by that. So that is something I would have added. Even in its smallest point, you could have had them at least showing where they were living and getting prepared for what they were about to do. I mean, honestly, even the smallest bit would have gone a long way, and they didn't do any of that. If you're expecting that, just know right out the gate, you're not getting that at all. The other thing I would do is I would definitely make sure that there was a bigger, better ending, because this ending, on top of everything else already being kind of womp womp womp, the ending, the way that they did it, just really drives that poor rating home. At least it did for me. And again, I'm not going to spoil it, and I'm not going to tell you exactly what happens, but I will tell you that it definitely leaves you going, I don't know where they're going from here. And I don't really know that anything they could do in another one is really going to make up for the pitfalls that this one had. You may feel differently, but that's just my opinion, and this is how I feel about it. So another thing that I like to say in my videos is, would I rewatch this movie, and would I buy it when it comes out? This one is a big no for me. So for me, I would recommend honestly waiting, not going to theaters to watch it. I would go ahead and wait for the home release and rent it, on either Prime or whatever other streaming service, or maybe even just wait till it comes out on a streaming service for free, to be honest with you, because the other two are just so much better that this one falls way too flat for me. So in that particular category, I feel like this one is not one that I will really want to rewatch. Maybe if it's free I would, and maybe if I'm doing a marathon of the other ones I might watch it, but there's just so many things that kind of clobber you over the head that are wrong with it that make it really hard to want to rewatch it. That's just where I'll leave it from there. So again, I give this one a 4 out of 10. The reason for that is, again, because I felt like it just fell short of the things that I thought it was going to go into. The storyline was been there, done that, and there was just not enough strengths in the movie to really pull it together and to really make it make sense as to why we needed this movie. I think that honestly the franchise didn't need this one based on what it had in it, what it offered, and they could have left this one completely out. Would have been fine. Now, had it been done well, and had it gone into the backstory of the strangers, and had it given you a different perspective, and maybe even gone POV from the strangers' perspectives, that might have added a whole new level or layer, and I would have really liked that. And this is not the ending to the movie, but this is the ending that I think would have been spectacular if somehow we did see the strangers get killed, which would have immediately made you go, what? Because there's 2 other movies, and that we had found out that they were part of a cult, that there were other groups of 3 basically that went out other areas that were ready to take the place of the people who were no longer able to do it. So that would have been like a mind-blown moment where it would have just opened up so many questions and led to other things that you could have done with the storyline. So that's just kind of where I would have wanted the ending to be. And again, this is a completely made up thing on my end. This is not how it ends, and it is not a spoiler because it doesn't tell you anything about this movie or what it actually ends with. I won't tell you that because I want you to be able to see it for yourself if you want to, and I want you to be able to choose if you spoil it for yourself. I'm not going to do that for you. So let me know what you think in the comments. Does this sound like something you want to see? Does it sound like you want to judge for yourself? Do you think I'm being a little harsh on it? Let me know. I, am open to all of your comments, of course. I want to know how you feel about it. I am just sharing my humble opinion on what I think based on all the horror movies that I love. And like I said, I'm a fan of this franchise, so I was really looking forward to it. And I just felt disappointed, and I wanted to make sure that if you're going into the weekend excited like I was, and you wanted to know, as soon as possible what this movie's about and whether or not you should see it, that you should see someone, someone's perspective who does like horror movies and who does like the franchise to know what to expect. So I'm going to wrap this video up here, guys. I will be putting out, of course, more videos, more content as we go. Definitely want to know your opinion on things you would like to see. If you've watched any of my videos, which ones in particular stand out to you? What do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see? I want to know, so definitely let me know. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button and hit that like button as well, because it helps the channel so much and it helps me to know exactly what content you want to see and what you like. So thanks again for watching, guys. Bye. Until the next time.